Hi, I'm Sarah Delaney with Missouri Star, and we are back with our special guest designer, Tian Connaughton. Welcome back, Tian.
Thank you. So glad to be back. I'm excited.
So happy to have you here. Tian is going to share another one of her beautiful, colorful shawls with us. This time it is the Mendon wrap.
The Mendon wrap.
Yeah, and this one is knit, so some fun with our crocheters, some fun with our knitters. Tell us about this pattern.
Okay, so this pattern looks more complicated than it actually is. It's using it's using Mosaic knitting techniques. Super simple. There's a chart to go with this pattern. So if you are a visual learner, you can see exactly what color goes where to make this amazing shawl. And it's just a lot of repeats of only 12 stitches.
Oh,
so
easy to internalize and memorize, yeah. And this shawl is worked long way, so not from short end to short end, but long side to long side. So you have lots of time to get used to those repeats.
Absolutely. And a trick for all those repeats, stitch markers.
Oh yeah.
Use stitch markers, break it up so you
They
have
are
12
your friend.
stitches to really focus on at any time.
Nice.
And then use a long needle. Don't use straight.
No, you'll never fit these
You'll
stitches
never fit all
on
those
single
stitches.
point needles, no. So 40 inches?
40 inches at the minimum.
Okay.
But if you have a 60,
Even better. Yeah.
because we're working over a lot of stitches.
So how wide is it?
It's like
3...
54-ish, 56 inches.
Yeah.
It's like 300 stitches.
That's a lot of stitches, but that's why you have that long needle. And remember, you're only working in 12 stitch repeats, so it's totally doable.
So you can put it down and come back and know exactly where you are.
Oh, I love that. I don't like a mystery when I pick a project up. No. So what other materials do we need for this? Besides, what size needles, now that we know how long they need to be, what size?
Okay, so we need two different size needles. We need an 8 and a 9.
Okay.
The 8 is what we use for the body, for all the knitting. The 9 is for the cast on and the bind off.
Oh.
Because we want like a loose
Yeah,
bind
we
off
don't
and
want
cast
really
on.
tight edges.
Exactly.
Gotcha. All right, and the yarn?
The yarn we're using worsted weight. We have Madelinetosh
The vintage?
Vintage.
Yeah.
We have Cherry Blossom. What's the other one?
Oh, Medusa. This is...
Medusa is such a fun color.
This is Malabrigo Rios. Yeah, so the sample is in Malabrigo Rios, but you can use any worsted weight yarn that you want. Madelinetosh Vintage is another great one that has fantastic hand-dyed colors like the Malabrigo does. Yeah, so the Medusa is fun. It's like that nice
speckly,
orchidy background, but lots of different speckly colors in it that just works out beautifully in the wrap. It almost ends up looking like multiple different colors of yarn.
Exactly. So you're
because
doing
of the
a lot
speckles.
of work.
Yeah. Yeah. Let the yarn do the heavy lifting for you.
And then pair it with a solid and you're good to go. And we have a trick for choosing your colors.
Yes, tell us about that.
So I originally picked out 2 colors and I'm knitting and it just didn't look good. It was like blurry and muddy.
Yeah.
And I realized my values and my colors are off. They're too close, so you can't see them. And what I mean is, if you take your phone, take a photo of the 2 colors you want, and go to your black and white and see if there's a variation of those 2 colors, you know your values are far enough apart that they will pop. If they're too close, you're gonna get this muddy look.
Yeah, and if they look like the same color gray, one of them has to change to be lighter or darker.
Yeah, and I'm gonna show you later on what a muddy version looks like.
Oh, okay.
But if you do what we just did, we just talked about, you will not have a muddy.
You will not have a muddy wrap.
You will have really
stunning
great
colors. Yeah.
Stunning color combination.
Oh, I'm so excited about this. So the rest, stitch markers and then your regular toolkit?
The regular toolkit, scissors, tapestry needle, and just get a bunch of stitch markers.
Yeah, because you're going to need
every
to put one.
12 stitches you want a marker.
Awesome. All right, so why don't we get started? Show us how we get this shawl going.
Okay. So for our small example, we're only casting on 26 stitches.
Okay.
And you can use a regular long tail cast on. But for the long, regular size shawl, I recommend using a cable cast on, just because you don't want to have to guess how much yarn you need and then fail at, a 200 and then you have to start all over again.
Because with the long tail cast on, you have to make sure your tail is long enough.
Exactly. So with a cable cast on, that's not an issue.
Yeah, you just start with a tail long enough to weave in and a slip knot.
So make a slip knot, tighten that on there. And what you do is insert your needle. The first one is always so fiddly.
Yeah.
And then just slip that on.
Oh, so you're basically knitting a stitch.
You're pretty much knitting a stitch.
And then slipping it
But
back
you're slipping it
onto
onto the other needle. And it becomes so repetitive. So you could just sit there and just make one after the other.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and this way, when you get to the right number of stitches, you have the right number of stitches.
Exactly.
Do you, for your own sanity, say put a stitch marker every 20 stitches so that you only have to count to 20?
Yes, because sometimes counting to 20 is very difficult. So I would work a few, put a stitch marker. It could be after 20, after 50.
Yep, whatever number you're
whatever
comfortable
you're
with.
comfortable with, until you get the number that you need.
Which again, for this pattern is 300 plus, so, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a lot to try and keep track of. So if you can keep track of smaller numbers, even better. Go ahead and continue with your cast on until you've got that number of stitches that you need, and then come back here and join us for row 1. So that's a lot of stitches to cast on, but once you've got those cast on, we're ready for row 1.
We're ready for row 1. So let's drop this needle that we're using, which is the larger needle, and we want to use the size 8 to work
forward. Okay.
And we'll be working in a corrugated ribbon.
Ooh.
And that is using the second color.
In the ribbing.
In the ribbon.
Corrugated ribbing is one of my
It
favorites.
is so fun.
Yeah.
It looks amazing.
Yes, it does.
So grab your smaller needle and your darker yarn.
Okay.
All right. With your first color and the new needle size, knit 2. Take your next color and purl 2.
Ah.
And the trick that I like when I'm doing this is to leave all my tails on the back. So this is the right side.
All right, so row 1 is the right side of your work. Gotcha.
And that it will make more sense when we get to the next row of exactly what I mean.
Okay.
All right, and carry your yarn nice and loose across. We don't want to tug it too tight.
Right.
So we'll drop the dark color and the light color.
We go back to knitting 2.
Knit 2.
So this is where I've done a lot of color work knitting in my past, and so for me, I will carry both of these yarns, but I'll carry one in each hand.
I do too, but I'm awful at purling with my left hand.
Ah, so I'll purl with my right, but I'll knit with my left. Because I can't continental purl, but I can continental knit. But
And
whatever way works for you.
yeah, and this is a great project to practice all those techniques on, because you have a lot of stitches you need to work across.
You do.
And
But
just-
if it makes the most sense for you to just pick up a color and work 2 stitches, drop that color, pick up the next color and work those 2 stitches, do that. There's no knitting police.
There isn't. And just make sure your tension is not too tight.
Right.
We don't
Nice
want
and
our
loose.
stitches to pucker on us.
Ah, so we start and we end with knit stitches.
So nice and slow.
Very nice.
I know I'm going a lot slower than you are.
Oh, it's okay. I'm a speed demon. But they're going to be going even slower than we are because they have 300 plus stitches to go across. So go ahead and work your way across this first full row and then join us back here for row 2. But that's row 1. We're now ready for row 2.
Row 2. Okay, so the thing I like with row 2 is that if I just continue across, I'm going to have a gap here. So if I just purl, knit these there's going to be a gap in between these colors. So I like to twist my two colors at the end
before you start
before I
again.
start, even though I'm using the pink. It gives it just something. I prefer it.
Okay.
But if you try it and you're like, I just don't like it, then don't do it.
Gotcha.
It keeps it a little snug. Okay.
So now we're doing the opposite of what we were doing before.
Exactly.
We're purling with the first color and knitting with the second color.
Okay. So when you purl, your yarn is in the front. When you knit, the yarn is in the back. For this project, I want you to keep all your yarn on this wrong side until you need it. So I'm going to knit, so I'll put it to the back and I'll knit 2. And then I'll bring it back to the front.
Yes, because there's going to be a float as you carry that color.
And I want that float all on the wrong side of my work.
Yes, so for us right now, that's in front of us. I was not thinking about that. Thank you, Tian.
Absolutely. That's why I'm here.
Well, it's your design. Yeah, thank you for being here to teach us.
Yeah. So just remember, on this row,
Always
this
in the
wrong
front.
side row, your yarn should always be on the front until you need to knit. And you slip it to the back, knit your 2 stitches, and bring it right back to the front. And just keep
Yeah.
going. And I like to just every now and then just kind of tug on my yarn just to make sure nothing's puckering and getting too tight.
Everything stays nice and loose.
Because as you're working, you're going to get tense.
Yeah.
You're going to just naturally want to tighten up. But just loosen up, shake your shoulders out.
Yeah. And we always scrunch the stitches up
Just-
on the needles near the tips when we're working on them anyway. So that is a good point to keep an eye on that tension as we work along. Work your way across row 2. It's going to take a bit. And then meet us back here for row 3. So those are the 2 rows, rows 1 and 2. Those are the 2 rows of our corrugated ribbing. Any other tips or tricks or anything we should know about working the remaining rows of the corrugated ribbing?
Just keep working as the pattern indicate, and just remember at the end when you're changing colors, is just to twist them at the end. And just to make sure you're not pulling too tight when you're twisting your colors.
So that it
Just
stays nice and loose.
Maintain that nice loose tension.
Right. All right, so you're going to work through row 6.
Yeah.
Row
rows.
6 in your corrugated ribbing. Get those 6 rows done and then meet us back here for the next steps. All right, Tian, once we've got that corrugated ribbing done, what's
we
next?
get into the mosaic.
Okay.
And it's so much fun. It looks more complicated than it is. I keep saying that, and it's true, because I don't like a lot of complicated things in my life. So I made this super easy for you.
Okay.
You're gonna follow the chart. There's written instructions as well, but I like the chart because I can see the visual representation of what this thing should look like.
Yeah, and the chart is in 2 different colors, so it's really easy to see the difference between your color A and your color B, or your first color and your second color, and where to use it in the chart.
Okay. Yeah, and use stitch markers. Mark off every 12 stitches, not including that first and last stitch because those are not included in the repeat.
Right.
So you'll put a stitch marker after the first and right before the last, and then every 12 a stitch marker, and that will keep your place. So when you're going through the chart, you have this rhythm as you're going each row. And then the best part of this pattern, I know there's a lot of best parts, but the next best part is when you get to the wrong side row, you're just working whatever color that you see.
Oh, easy.
So you're just purling the color. If you see pink, you purl pink. If you see the multicolor, you purl that color.
Oh, nice.
No thinking involved here.
You really don't have to think on that second row. So you've got that experience working through your corrugated ribbing with using both colors. So that shouldn't be an issue for you as you move into the mosaic. And then remembering that you're going to keep both of those colors to the front as you're working your purl stitches across. And you'll be able to see the floats from when you did the corrugated ribbing to remind you of that. You're going to keep both colors to the front as you're purling, both colors to the back when you're on your knit rows, and just work your way through the chart. It's
36 rows.
36 rows.
And don't forget, the wrong side row, you're just following the color that you see.
Yeah,
You
so
don't have to think
autopilot.
about it. So it's like a rest row.
Yeah. So you're really only having to think on like 18 of those rows.
Yeah, and you can do that.
That's not bad.
It's not bad at all.
Yeah, and with only 12 stitches,
That
by
you
the
do.
time you get to the halfway point on this wrap, you're going to remember what those 12 stitches are. So you won't have
Exactly.
to reference the chart or think it through. And then on that purl row, you're just doing the color, you're just working with the color that you see.
Exactly.
Nice and easy.
All right, so I have one more thing to show you before we
Okay.
get to the other bit.
Okay.
Remember when we talked about checking your colors to make sure that they will actually not be too muddy?
Yes.
So I use these two colors.
So that's Madeline Tosh Vintage. One is Pinata Pop and one is Well Water.
And if you're looking
That
at it,
doesn't
it's
look like two
very
colors.
hard to see the
Wow.
ribbon. Look at that ribbon. It's like,
So
where
that's the
is it?
ribbing and this is the Mosaic.
And you can't really see it.
No.
But
I
if
mean,
you
this is
look at-
beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Oh, wait, and there's actually stripes up here, too.
But you can't.
Yeah.
really see,
But you can
you
really
can
see
really
it.
see it.
Yeah.
So use that trick with your camera, your phone, and just make sure that your values, they are gray
Very strong.
and white, right,
Yeah.
and not too muddy in between.
Yeah, because you don't want to put this much work into a project and
No.
realize just how flat it is.
It is.
Not that these colors are flat. These are beautiful colors, but you're losing the design of the shawl because they're too close together.
And you will notice when you start the ribbon that you can't even tell which color is which.
Yeah.
Because as I was knitting this piece, I was just like, okay, where am I?
Yeah.
What am I doing?
That's
So-
Project Heartbreak right there.
Yeah.
So do that. That is a great trick. Photograph your colors in black and white. Make sure that they don't look like the same gray. As long as there's contrast between them when they're in grayscale, there will be contrast
great.
between them when you work with them. Yeah, that's a great tip, Tian. Thank
Right.
you. So you're going to work through those 36 rows of mosaic. Remember, 18 of those rows are just resting. You're just purling the color that you see. And then we're ready for some easy stripes
Easy
with
stripe.
the fun of...
Short rows.
Excellent. Get that chart done and meet us back here. 36 rows of that beautiful mosaic colorwork. And now we're ready for some simple stripes with the fun of some short rows. So why are there short rows in this shawl?
Okay, so if you didn't have short rows, you would just have a scarf.
Yeah, just
It'd be
long
just
rectangle.
a long rectangle. Instead, I wanted to give you a little bit of a shape, a little bit of a curve to this wrap, so that when
Yeah.
you put it on, you have like this nice little shape.
It does
at the
have like a
back.
little
Yeah,
swag
swoop.
at the back. It's
A little
really
swoop,
nice.
swoop, yeah. So you'll follow the pattern. You'll work the pattern. There's like a couple of rows of plain stock in it. Then you'll get into the short rows. And how I do the short rows is very easy. I tell you, everything I do is easy.
I like how Tian's brain works.
So you'll purl to where it indicates in the pattern.
And this is all detailed out in the
It's
pattern.
all in the pattern.
No guesswork.
So you'll purl across. And for the pattern, you want to go beyond the halfway mark.
Okay.
So I'm just going to do it here on this little sample. And when you get to the number of stitches that it says in the pattern, you're just going to stop and turn your work. Okay? So I'm there. I'm going to turn my work.
Okay.
I'm going to slip my first stitch and knit to where it tells me to knit.
So short rows, if you've never done short rows before, they're short rows because they are literally short.
Short, yeah.
You are going to work to a certain point in that row, but you're not going to finish it. So it's a short row. Then you're going to work backwards, but you're not going to go all the way to the end. The pattern will indicate where you stop, short of the end, and then you work your way back across, short of where you went the last time, back across, short of where you went the last time. Eventually, you'll end up working all of those stitches and going back to working end to end.
Exactly. So I'm doing the second side of the stitch marker. So I went to a few stitches on the side, stop, turn. Now I'm doing a few stitches on this side, and it's the same number of stitches.
Yep, and that's, again, that's all detailed in your pattern.
And then you'll take your yarn and you'll just turn
Yep.
and just go back, right? And you'll slip and purl.
When your yarn cooperates.
when it does.
And
Which
when it doesn't,
sometimes
you
it
just take
doesn't.
one out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you just keep doing what the pattern says.
So then if you were on the last row of the short row, then you would just work all the way to the end.
All the
for
way
here.
to the end.
And then when you work the next row, you would just knit all the way to the end, working past those places where you stopped short. And that's what creates these wider bands within the stripes. That helps to make that, what did you call it, a swag?
A little swoop.
sway?
A little swoop. The swoop.
Swoop. I love that. The swoop in the back of the shawl.
And let me just show you what happens when you get to that gap. You want to slip 2 together on the wrong side row.
Ah.
And then it will tell you to do another short row. You'll do the same thing. And this is just a sample. This is not the numbers in the pattern.
Right,
So-
just the technique.
And when you get to the right side, you will knit 2 together.
Ah.
So on the wrong side, we want to...
Because you're purling.
Right.
And so
And
you'll
then-
purl those 2 together.
and
And,
then you
on the
wanna
knit side, so it's one stitch on the one that you slipped. And that's, so if you didn't do that, there might end up being a little gap in your stitches.
Right.
Yeah, this just helps to close up that little gap and
Exactly.
keep the fabric looking nice and smooth all the way across.
Exactly.
So don't be intimidated by something like short rows. It's super easy, and it's less stitching.
It's less.
So they're shorter rows. You're doing less stitching to create a really nice feature within your pattern.
And then you'll go to the end of the row, following the pattern, and then you'll do the short row a couple more times.
Okay, and then it's just some really nice,
Yeah.
easy 2-row stripes.
Very easy. You get to the end of the row, you can snip the end of your yarn, start with a new color.
Great. And then what is the very last thing that we do in this
The
shawl?
very last thing is we're working a few rows in just stockinette,
I love that.
right? And then we finish up with the simple garter.
Oh, knit every row.
Knit every row on the right side and the wrong side. Can't be any simpler than
No,
that.
so it's like running a marathon through this shawl, and then
And
you
then
get to
you-
the end, it's
it's
that
like,
nice walking cool down.
Yes.
You don't have to think about it. You're just knitting four
It's like 5 rows.
or 5 rows, all in the same color. And then anything special in our bind off?
On the bind off, go back to your larger needle.
Right, because we want a nice loose
A
edge.
loose edge. We don't want it too tight and too stiff. If you need to, and you know you're usually a tight knitter, you might want to go up to 2, or just bind off super loosely.
Okay.
And
Good to
then
know.
that's it.
So then weaving an end.
Weave an end and then block.
And how did you block this one?
I laid this out on my bed diagonal
Yeah,
because
it's a long shawl.
it's long. So I laid it out diagonal. I did wet block this, but you can steam block or you can mist block. And if
Nice.
you're going to mist block, you want to mist on both sides to get it all wet.
Yep.
But because I wet block, I just put it in the sink with some soak and wrung it out. Not wring it out, but in
Oh,
a towel. Squeeze it out,
never
roll it,
twist your work, but squeeze it.
and roll it in a towel. Get it nice and dry. It's a big piece, so I think I needed like 2 towels.
Yeah. Or a beach towel. That big beach towel that you're not using in the middle of winter.
Exactly. And then just lay it out on the bed and just lightly pin it.
Yeah, just to hold it
Just
in
to
place.
hold it in place.
Yeah, because there's not any lace that we're opening up in this, and we don't necessarily want points
Pull in,
pulled or
no.
scallop edges. Nice straight edges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just keep it away from your cats.
Yeah.
My cats like
close the door.
wet wool.
Oh,
So,
yeah, mine do too. The minute there's something out blocking, they have to lay on it. It's crazy.
so if you don't mind that, just leave it out on a rug in your office or in your bedroom or
Yeah.
somewhere. But
And
keep
the
it
cats,
nice and safe.
the cats will come warm up on it. Yeah.
It will not help it to dry though.
No.
And then that's it. You just wear it.
Oh,
And we show you a few different ways to wear it.
we do. Yes, absolutely. In the pattern, and we'll have a couple here throughout the tutorial that you've seen. Tian, thank you so much for sharing the Mendon shawl with us. It is gorgeous. I love your color
Thank you.
choices. I love the techniques in this shawl.
And it's easy. Anybody could do this. I can do
I love
this.
that. Tian, will you tell folks where they can find you outside of our tutorials?
Sure, you can find me on my website at tianconnaughton.com or on Instagram, Knit Designs by Tian.
I love it. We'll have all that information in the description below. Thank you for joining us. If you haven't yet picked up a kit for the Mendon shawl, you can do that by following the link below or visiting Missouri Star Online. As always, thank you for joining us and happy knitting.
Happy knitting.